This is Donna in Frederick, Maryland. I'm glad you called. You're up first, and it's great to have you here. Hi.
Thank you, Russ. Thanks for having me on. We've been hearing a lot about the theme, Black Lives Matter, but the sad reality is that the African-American community needs to take a good look at their progressive representatives who choose their party over their own citizens. And I feel that to a certain degree, the mayor allowed too much time to pass, which allowed the situation to escalate.
Now,
and they're going to try and pin it.
That is what I wanted you to say. The mayor allowed too much time. I'm going to ask you a question about that. Do you think the mayor allowed too much time because he's incompetent?
No. I just think that perhaps she was maybe not as on top of it as she could have been.
I think she was totally on top of it. You want to hear why?
Yes, I do, because I'm trying to process that.
Because I'll tell you, one of the great unspoken things that's happening in police departments all over the country, in Ferguson, in Detroit, everywhere, the Obama administration is essentially taking over and rewriting police procedural manuals under the philosophies that Eric Holder and Obama have toward policing. And their attitude is the police are responsible for this. The police, particularly if they happen to be militarized in the way they look, the way they, in their uniforms and the vehicles they drive around town, if it looks like a military operation, that's really bad. And so there's an unseen, it's underreported effort by the Obama administration to totally take over local police departments. To illustrate Obama, you were going to mention I know you were going to mention, because Snerdley says here, she was eventually going to say that the theory she holds is that the governor of Maryland, who's white, is ultimately going to be blamed for this. End up blaming the governor for not acting fast enough. That's a logical, by the way, thing to think, given the Obama administration, given the media, and given that's the closest Republican you can find is in the state capitol. So blame him. Now, why was his response delayed? Because the mayor didn't call him and ask for the National Guard. The mayor waited. Why did the mayor not institute the curfew until tonight? While everything was going to hell yesterday, why did she not institute the curfew until tonight instead of last night? Now she's out trying to explain what she meant when she said that we had to give the protesters space to destroy. She's acting like, how could anybody have really thought that she actually meant that? She tries to walk it back. Have that coming up, too. I think what's actually going on here, there are many things going on. I don't mean to focus on one thing as the key that unlocks every answer here. But this circumstance in Baltimore will and is providing yet another opportunity for Obama, who's not even there and doesn't even appear to care about it, doesn't even appear to be talking about it, his brand new attorney general, to take over the Baltimore Police Department. I happen to know, I have a news story here that says Obama called the governor, and he urged the governor to exercise restraint against the protesters. What that means is you keep control of your cops. Your cops will make this worse because your cops are the reason for this. Doesn't matter if they're black cops. Doesn't matter if they're white cops. The police force is the means of oppression. That's the message. The police force is how the oppressors keep the oppressed oppressed. Now, in Baltimore, they can't make the case that it's racial or racist because it isn't. So what they have to do in Baltimore is just make, and this is a tough one for them, because these are big government people. They believe in big government. Now they have to be seen criticizing it. It's very delicate for them. I'm talking about Obama and Loretta Lynch and all these other libs who really want to rein in police departments where Ferguson's been neutered for all intents and purposes. And it's going to happen to the Baltimore Police Department. It's happened to I think it's 18 or 19 police departments now since Obama has been president that new federal guidelines have been issued after problems occurred in communities where the police departments were blamed. This police department's being blamed. And the regime is putting out the notion that the police department's what caused this and is responsible for it simply by virtue of a presence. And if you want these agitators to get even more agitated, you want these protesters to get even more protestful, then you send the cops out there. What we must do is keep the cops away. Otherwise, you're going to provoke the protesters even more. The benefit of the doubt is given to the protesters because that's where the sympathy is. The protesters are part of the grievance industry. The grievance industry is legitimate. They're African Americans. They are minorities. And they are oppressed. They have been oppressed since the days this country was founded. And there's a commentator, a professor at Columbia, Mark Lamont Hills, on CNN last night saying that that's all this is an uprising. It's not even a riot. It's an uprising of African Americans who finally can't take it anymore. Fed up with 230 years of oppression. The problem for Mark Lamont Hill, again, as it is for all these people, is that the oppressors are all Democrats here. The oppressors are all liberals, and many of the oppressors here are African American. So you'll have to forgive them for being confused, and you'll have to forgive them for maybe saying contradictory things. Because normally in a situation like this, there's a nearby Republican somewhere that can be blamed for all of this, who also would happen to be white. That doesn't exist here. So they're having to improvise and ad lib. And that's why I think they're slipping up and praising this mother, when normally that kind of thing wouldn't happen. Okay, the next predictable thing has happened. Obama has spoken. The protests were peaceful and nonviolent until the cops got involved. That's when the violence got started. Predictable. That's exactly what was going to happen. Welcome back, my friends. Great to have you here. Rush Limbaugh serving humanity simply by being here. You are tuned to the most listened to radio talk show in the country. It's been that way for 25 years and counting. The telephone number, if you want to be on the program, is 800-282-2882, and the email address, lrushbo@eibnet.com. Some incredible new news on the whole Clinton scandal is being buried by the story in Baltimore. It will not be buried here. Before this program concludes today, I will get to that. There's some other things out there percolating as well. But understandably, what's happening in Baltimore is covering everything up by design. The President of the United States just answered a question about Baltimore during the joint press conference that he had with the Prime Minister of Japan. And so much of this is predictable because we've seen all this before. As I say, this isn't really that different either. I was going to say that what's really striking about this is the absence of a genuine racial component. The most you can say, if you want to try to say there's race involved here, is that one of the cops or a couple of cops involved in a Freddie Gray thing last week were white. The cops threw him into the van. But they still don't know when Freddie Gray got hurt, what exactly happened, and that's all being used. But there aren't any whites around here, folks, and there aren't any Republicans around here, and there aren't any conservatives around here, and therefore the usual targets can't be blamed. So instead what they have to do is blame oppressors. And this is tricky for them because the oppressors are the government here, but these are big government people. So this is a real tricky thing for the left to try to manage and propagandize and manage the public relations of. Because this is all happening where liberal Democrats have run the show for decades. And in Baltimore, particularly, you're looking at black liberal Democrats have run the show for decades. 60% of the city population is black. This is not Ferguson in any way, shape, manner, or form, yet they're making it look like it. They're doing everything they can to make it look like it. They're even trying to say that some of the people protesting in Baltimore still ticked off what happened in Ferguson with hands up, don't shoot. But as I mentioned, let me read to you from the Baltimore Sun story about what happened in Mondawmin Mall. And the mayor and her curious timing on her curfew announcement. I mean, you had all hell breaking loose late yesterday afternoon or last evening, and she announces a curfew starting today, which gave the protesters space last night to get it all out of their systems. And I think what's happening here, Baltimore is getting the Benghazi treatment, in a sense, because Benghazi, there wasn't a Republican around there either. There's no way to blame what happened in Benghazi on a Republican, so they had to find somebody. And that was that poor sap video maker who had the slightest, still doesn't know what happened to him, other than he is in jail. Now, Catherine Herridge at Fox News just reported that a data company has confirmed the 50 social media accounts that were agitating in Ferguson are also agitating in Baltimore. So you have people who have seen an opportunity. They ginned most of the protesters in Ferguson were out of town. And you've even had Elijah Cummings of the Congressional Black Caucasians who said the same thing about Baltimore. Most of the protesters are actually from out of town. But a data analytics company, has just confirmed the 50 social media accounts agitating in Ferguson are also agitating in Baltimore. I mean the Twitter sewer, folks, is agitating. And the Baltimore Sun references it this way. Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake declared a curfew across the city starting Tuesday and for the next week from 10 p.m. to 5. Well, you can get a lot of destruction done by 10 p.m. That's an awful late curfew. A curfew of 10 o'clock? For crying out. Well, I guess they got to get people into Camden. Yes, the Orioles are in town all week. Aha. Oh, did you happen to see one of the club vice presidents, the son of the owner, John Angelos, with a statement because of what happened on Saturday? He had a statement in the paper on Sunday. Whew, man. I mean, it was just think tank liberalism on parade. And I'm reading it in stunned disbelief because the guy, it's exactly what somebody would write if there were a bunch of Republicans nearby to blame. But there aren't any here. Anyway, back to the Baltimore Sun. Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake declared a curfew across the city starting tonight at 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. for adults, 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. for children 14 and younger. Now, this raises a question. Why was there no curfew last night when all of the mayhem was going on? Why impose it so late tonight? We can guess. Look at, folks, these are liberal Democrats. I mean, that tells us a lot about these people. Whether you want to admit it or not, it does. And one of the things it tells us is that the protesters are righteous. The protesters are legitimately aggrieved and cannot be held responsible. They are simply reacting to oppressive forces, even though they may be coming from a Democrat mayor, a Democrat police chief, Democrat commissioner, Democrat-run police department, doesn't matter. I mean, the narrative has to hold. Because the true innocents here are the mayhem makers. The protesters, above all else, will always be innocent. There will always be, when the left is in charge, a legitimate reason for this property destruction, for the fires, for the rioting, for the chaos. There's always a legitimate reason for it in liberalism. And it really doesn't matter who's in charge, because what they want to do is use the occasion of all of these kinds of events to grow their government, the federal government, and exercise and enact even more control over local communities. So circumstances like this, events like this, just fall right in the palm of their hands. Back to the Baltimore Sun story. The incident, this is the stuff that happened yesterday. The incident stemmed from a flyer that circulated widely among city school students via social media about a purge to take place at 3 p.m. starting at Mondawmin Mall and ending downtown. Such memes have been known to circulate regularly among city school students based on the film The Purge, which is about what would happen if all laws were suspended. You see, that is nirvana. That is utopia when the oppressors are shut down. When there's nobody around that can tell you no. Nobody around that can't say don't. Nobody around that can punish you when you do things. Nobody around that can tell you you can't do that. Whatever you want to do is fine. That was what the movie was about. And it encouraged that kind of thinking and encouraged reenacting it. The flyer included an image of protesters smashing the windshield of a police car on Saturday during a march spurred by the death of Freddie Gray. The confrontation near Mondawmin escalated quickly. Smoke filled the air as the cops responded with shields and a tactical vehicle. Demonstrators pelted the cops with rocks, bricks, and bottles. They assaulted a photojournalist. For those of you in Rio Linda, that's a picture taker. And officers fired back with tear gas and pepper balls. Demonstrators set a police vehicle ablaze at North and Pennsylvania Avenues. Nearby, they looted a CVS drugstore, which store officials said they had already closed before it caught fire. Rioters cut the fire hose as firefighters battled the blaze. Looting spread along Howard and Center Streets as afternoon turned to evening. Another group of people was destroying property around North and Fulton Avenues, police said, and a car was set on fire at North Avenue and Pulaski Street, just like the flyer told them to do. This didn't have anything to do with Freddie Gray, and it didn't have anything to do with the Gentle Giant. It had nothing to do with anything other than the flyer that went out and encouraged this kind of... Now, recent events like Ferguson, I mean, they're in everybody's mind, but there wasn't a trigger related to Ferguson or even Trayvon Martin. The trigger was the flyer put out on social media to encourage this very thing. They even had pictures of a burning cop car from Saturday. Go do it again. Do it in real life. Go out and act like there are no laws stopping you. And that's what happened. All but one gate at Oriole Park at Camden Yards was closed. The game set to start 7:05, but team officials postponed the game less than an hour before first pitch. Was scheduled. About 5 stores in the 600 block of Utah Street had busted windows, were looted after rioters came through after 4 p.m. Boubacar Saul said that looters destroyed his sister's store, Benita's. They stole hair extensions, a TV set, and boxes of hair products. Rishan George, who lives on the block, said you call 911 and nobody answers. And you see, you don't need a gun because the cops are going to protect you, except they're not because the cops are being restrained. Obama calls the governor, says you need to exercise police restraint here. The sign of the police is going to make it worse, thereby cementing the notion that the cops are the bad guys, the cops are the problem, the cops are not the solution, because the protesters are legitimate, and Obama's out there today after his press conference with the Japanese prime minister. He gets a question about Baltimore, and he says, hey, the protests were entirely peaceful. The violence only started when the cops showed up. I'm paraphrasing. That's not true. But you see, that's part and part. That was predictable, too. The innocents here, I mean it in plural, the innocent people here are the protesters. The innocent people are the rabble-rousers. The innocent people are those destroying storefronts. Because, you see, they have a reason they are oppressed by a wicked, mean country, founded, dead set against them. And all of these uprisings are just that. Mark Lamont Hill says, they're not riots. You can't call these riots. These are strategic uprisings. These are designed for the people of the community to show they're fed up and they're not going to take it anymore. Fed up with who? Again, you cannot find a Republican or conservative anywhere that has any kind of power or any responsibility or culpability for anything that's made these people mad. Like I say, if I were African American, same age as I am now, been voting Democrat all my life, listening to all these promises, I would be ticked off too. Empty promise after empty promise. And not only that, promises made to me haven't been fulfilled. I've been also hearing how the people that are oppressing me are going to be taken care of. These rich people, we're going to raise taxes on them. We're going to get your money back from them. We're going to punish these people. And they just get richer. And I continue to lose what little I had to begin with. And the Democrats continue to say to me, you can't trust the Republicans. Count on us. We'll protect you. We'll provide for you. And it doesn't happen. And I end up getting angrier and more unhappy by the day. And if I stop and actually be rational for a moment, I realize there aren't any Republicans around to be mad at. Here isn't, because I got to take a break. If I get started, I'll just have to interrupt this. So let's take the brief obscene profit break now, and we'll come back and review the mayor and how she's trying to swerve out of this, what she says is misunderstood comment about giving the protesters space to destroy. By the way, that has been stolen from me on several occasions. The most recent Friday night Hawaii 5-0. A character talked about LIVs, low information viewers. I kid you not, low information viewers. It was the guy that was on Lost, the big guy, George. Well, he's part of the 5-0 force now, and he's the resident conspiracy theorist, and he was explaining how low information viewers, how things get put past them, and how they don't. And I said, well, how about that? Here, Comedy Central copying me now, Hawaii 5-0. Never credited, but that's okay. It's enough that I know and can pass it on to you so that you know. Yeah. I've got the mayor here, and let's do it. Here's Stephanie Rawlings Blake. We're going to go back and review what she said on Saturday. First up,
I've made it very clear that I worked with the police and instructed them to do everything that they could to make sure that the protesters were able to exercise their right to free speech. It's a very delicate balancing act, because while we tried to make sure that they were protected from the cars and the other things that were going on, we also gave those who wished to destroy space to do that as well.
All right. Well, that's perfectly clear. I mean, we also gave those who wished to destroy space to do that as well. So there was a media cacophony in reaction, and last night, the mayor, Stephanie Rawlings Blake, held another press conference to talk about the rioting, and she got a question. What do you make of the criticism that your words might have encouraged some of the activity on the streets today, Mayor?
The very blatant mischaracterization of my words was not helpful today. We balance a very fine line between giving protesters, peaceful protesters, space to protest. What I said is, in doing so, people can hijack that and use that space for bad. I did not say that we were accepting of it. I did not say that we were passive to it. I was just explaining how property damage can happen during a peaceful protest. It is very unfortunate that members of your industry decided to mischaracterize my words and try to use it as a way to say that we're inciting violence.
Hey, you want me to translate this for you? She says that what we didn't get was that she was talking about peaceful protesters, all these peaceful, but when you give them space, sometimes the bad guys are going to come in and hijack it. And when you've given the peaceful protesters space to do their thing, well, we inadvertently gave the people who wish to destroy space as well, because they came in and hijacked the good protesters. That's what she says that she meant. The violent guys came in, they hijacked the space given to the peaceful protest. Now, she didn't encourage that, she said. She didn't want that to happen. But once it happened, nothing we could do. Once the violent guys came in and seized the space, well, we had given them the space, and they came in, they wanted to destroy. Our hands were tied. Because, see, the cops can't do anything about it. Now, what's her solution to all this? A reporter said, well, Mayor, this afternoon, many of the leaders of the peaceful protest made a public call for Reverend Sharpton to come in. Is that the sort of invitation you would welcome?
Anyone who wants to add to the calls for peace in our city is welcome. If Reverend Sharpton wants to come, I met with young people this afternoon, young people who want peace, young people who want justice. They were given their own suggestions on how young people themselves can add voice and try to add a sane message, a message that says we don't, not in our name, that you are destroying our city. Anybody that wants to be a part of sending that message, I welcome it.
You want me to translate that? Sorry. Not going to. Not sure I can. Well, she starts out by saying if Reverend Sharpton wants to come in, she met with young people who want peace, who want justice. Those are buzzwords. They're code words. They're not peace and justice. It's just peace and justice. You can't go anywhere else on this planet and find more of it than in the United States of America, except in these hellhole cities run by Democrats. Just burns me up. Well, there you have it. Sharpton's going to go. He's tweeted that he's going to go to Baltimore after the mayor welcomed him. Going to meet with the Baltimore mayor today, along with the National Action Network's Baltimore chapter and others, after welcoming his efforts. Reverend Sharpton to address the press today, 3:15, after this program, of course, before meeting with the Baltimore mayor, along with the leader of the Baltimore chapter of Sharpton's, group there, whatever. Anyway, par for the course, is it not?